Hold on.
Surviving unprecedented conditions.
Okay, let me make sure everyone's here and we can get started. I can take roll call. Okay, it is 7:07 p.m., December 7th, 2020. And I will take roll call. Kim.
Here.
Hernandez.
Here.
Lindsay Ryan.
Here.
Mendoza.
Here.
Cartha.
Here.
Halpern.
Here.
Tanya Vudi.
Here. All right. So due to the governor's executive order suspending certain open meetings act requirements in order to comply with the state of emergency, the District 65 Board of Education will be conducting virtual board and committee meetings. And Sergio, you have the first motion.
I move that the Board of Education approve tonight's meeting agenda as presented.
Second.
Kim.
Yes.
Hernandez.
Yes.
Lindsay Ryan.
Yes.
Mendoza.
Yeah.
Mendoza.
Yeah.
Mendoza. Okay. Halpern.
Yes.
Tanya Vudi.
Yes.
Okay, motion passes 7-0.
All right, great. So the truth in taxation law requires the district hold a public hearing prior to the board's approval of the final 2020 aggregate tax levy. Members of the public were asked to submit any comments for the public hearing on the 2020 tax levy by 5 p.m. today. Since no comments were submitted regarding the 2020 tax levy, I hereby conclude this public hearing. The board will be voting for the approval of the tax levy at tonight's meeting. And next up, we have our district update. Dr. Horton, did you have any superintendent comment?
Yes, I do. I just wanted to say I'm glad that everyone enjoyed their fall break. Looking forward to the winter break that's coming up. Winter wants to relax and let their hair down a little bit. It's been hard and very intense for our students, our staff, and definitely our family. So that the message from our side is to make sure that everyone takes this time to really just reflect and go into the new year with refreshed hope for what's 22 is going to bring us moving forward. In addition to that, I would also just like to say there's a series of videos that we are releasing. We released one last week where we met with our FACE team. Please be sure that you pass that information on to families so they'll know the resources that the district is offering. In addition to that, we'll be releasing a video before we go on winter break for our work with our special education support and also around our social work. That is full of information and knowledge and just a lot of questions that we've been asked consistently that we're sharing. And again, that is we'll continue to do those throughout the time, and we have something coming up with some medical professionals in the community. We're going to have some conversations with them. Those may not necessarily be released in a video, but we are trying to take advantage of the talent that we have in our community, from the medical doctors who volunteer to come and meet with us and just to give us some knowledge and inside track around vaccinations and things of that nature that's coming down the pipeline. So please stay tuned, and thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Horton. Do any of my board colleagues have board comments this evening? Okay. And then we have the always exciting and heartwarming high five. Dr. Horton, you're on mute.
I'm having little internet issues, so I'm I'm working off two pieces of technology. I have it though right in front of me. All right, sorry about that. So it is that time. As soon as my screen opens. Good evening. In a tradition of our celebrating hard work and exceptional performance, I am pleased to be able to continue recognizing our incredible District 65 team for their efforts as part of our High Five. Celebrating excellence in District 65 staff recognition program. As our staff continue to work diligently in navigating new ways of teaching, learning, and approaching significant changes in the daily operations, it is now more important than ever to uplift them and spotlight their incredible work. I wish we can celebrate all. Before we get started, I'm going to turn it over for some housekeeping notes.
Thanks, Dr. Horton. As always, I just want to take this opportunity to thank Byline Bank, our local community sponsor of this program, for making it possible and costing no money to the district to be able to provide recognition certificates and $100 gift cards to each of our individuals that we're recognizing this evening. We continue to receive nominations almost every single day, which is awesome. So I just want to encourage people to continue to visit our website at district65.net and click on the high five button on the homepage. Without further ado, I will send it back to Dr. Horton.
All right. Tonight, we have the pleasure of virtually welcoming Mario and Mary. I will now share a little more about each of our nominees, and we will do a virtual round of applause at the end. First, we will recognize Mario Chess. Mario serves as the district school-age child care site coordinator for Kingsley Elementary. Mario has supported District 65 for 26 years and was nominated by District 65 family member Emily McMahon. Emily wanted to take the time to thank and acknowledge Mr. Chess for his kindness and willingness to support her child during her previous year in kindergarten. However, the COVID-19 pandemic halted her plans, and so she decided to submit a nomination for Mr. Chess for his school year and shared the following. My daughter had a hard time adjusting to kindergarten and had extreme separation issues with her family, especially during the drop-off at before school program. She was scared and had a very hard time being new to school with all of the new students. Mr. Mario stepped in without question to go way above and beyond his duties to help her. He had so many things to worry about and be responsible for in his job, and he went out of his way to make sure that he could address my daughter's need. He walked her to the door every single day. He held her hand on the playground every single day. He often would suggest little things to me to make her feel better and inform me if and how she wasn't improving. He was so kind and understanding and took the time to make sure she felt comfortable. I know he had a million other things on his plate to worry about, but he still made us feel like we had all of the attention in the world. Not to mention, my daughter was also has peanut allergy. So he had to help us also navigate this. We all know how challenging that can be. This really helped my daughter, and I'm honestly so thankful to have people like Mr. Mario in our schools. Due to the COVID-19 pandemic, I never had the opportunity to properly thank him at the end of the school year, but he deserves way more than even just this award. Thank you. Mr. Chess, this is the type of report I love hearing about our staff. Your kindness and your eagerness to support students no matter what, it's inspiring. Next, we will highlight the hard work accomplished by Ms. Mary Young, a first grade educator at Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. Literary and Fine Arts School. Mary has served the District 65 family for 15 years and was also nominated by a D65 family member, J.C. Herman. J.C. shared that hearing Ms. Young's voice in my house each morning brings me joy to the point of having tears in my eyes. Her uplifting attitude welcomes my excited kids each morning. But the best is hearing the first grade cheer. Not only does it remind me what day of the week it is, it also pumps up everyone in the house to get to work. She is attentive to each child through meeting their individual needs. She clearly takes time to reflect on her practices, making adjustments as needed and creating an even better learning experience than before. Her dedication to her students can be seen in the way as she has collaborated with families to achieve results only possible when a community works together. We are so very grateful to have the opportunity to be a part of her class. Thank you, Ms. Young. Your responsiveness to your students, as well as your ability to shape your instructional practices to meet their needs and goals, shows how committed you are to our students. What's even more impressive is that this commitment extends beyond our students and to their families. Thank you for building a much-needed sense of community that each classroom should have. My favorite part of the evening is this one. It's time for some virtual high fives on a job well done. Your certificates will be sent to your buildings for you to return in person, and your gift cards will be sent electronically. Let's celebrate them, everyone. Let's go. On behalf of the school board and our entire leadership team, I want to thank you. Thank you for always putting the needs of your students and families first. Can I get a round of applause for these incredible individuals? Does anyone have anything that they would like to share?
I would just like to thank Mario and Mary so much for your inspiration. Education is truly hard work, and that is how our kids and families need us to show up. But it takes, really special individuals and a special level of care to rise to the occasion in a way that is consistent and visible and felt in authentic ways. And we are so fortunate to have your talents, particularly in this time when we really do need to show up for each other. And we just greatly appreciate you and are inspired by you and have so much gratitude. Thank you.
And Mario, Mary, thank you for joining us this evening.
Thank you all. Be well.
All right.
Yeah.
And that is it for me from the superintendent report.
Thank you all for giving us the opportunity at the board level to have a moment to get in touch with the work that's happening in our schools and in our classrooms and in such a meaningful and affecting way. Thanks for the opportunity. I'm gonna move us along on our agenda to public comment. Any member of the public wishing to submit a public comment to be read at the December 7th, 2020 board meeting was asked to email their comment to the board secretary, Karashi A at district65.net by 5 p.m. on December 7th, 2020. And Adila, I'll turn it over to you to read the comments that we received.
Great. So we did receive a couple of comments, or a few comments, which I'll go through. The first one is from Lauren Jonas, and she submits questions to the school board. The first one is, can the board give parents some more information on the metrics that will be used to determine whether or not to resume in-person learning on January 19th? From the supplied metrics for reopening and/or re-exit, it looks like the district will be looking at statewide and zip code specific positivity rates. Can you clarify under what terms exactly schools can reopen? 2, the New York Times has reported that an increasing amount of research shows that COVID infection rates within elementary schools are substantially lower than they are in the general public. At the same time, the risk to young children of prolonged online learning are very high, especially among Black, Brown, and economically disadvantaged households. Given this new research, would the board consider strengthening their commitment to reopening at least elementary schools and publishing a plan on what that will look like? Many thanks, Lauren Jonas, Evanston parent. Okay, the second comment is from Susan Feltz. She says, hello. She submits her question. Why is it that other suburbs who have a substantial great income than Evanston are able to open their schools and we cannot or have not? That is not equally fair based on household income. Our lower income families cannot afford extensive therapy that most kids who have been isolated are needing. It is unfair to have Evanston schools open as it has been well documented by several studies that kids in quarantine or remote learning are requiring therapy from being socially isolated from their peers by being forced to stay home, out of school, and when the higher income neighborhoods open up their schools. We can do better serving our lower income students. Susan Phelps. The third comment is from Joel Sternstein, a parent of District 65, says, I'm extremely concerned about the slow pace and lack of effort to reopen District 65 schools. I hear story after story about the deleterious effects that the school closures are having on kids. They are suffering from irritability, weight gain, and most disconcerting depression. The board and administration need to start responding to parents, physicians, and mental health professionals who are seeing this firsthand. How come there were no physicians on your return to school task force? You seem to be ignoring medical science. There are nearby districts and even private and parochial schools in Evanston allowing in-person instruction. While there have been sporadic outbreaks of COVID, there have been no mass outbreaks among students and or teachers at these schools. Why can't District 65 allow in-person instruction? Why can't District 65 imitate what these other successfully open schools have done? I'm also very concerned with the lack of vigorous instruction during online schooling. Why are Mondays now only half days? It makes no sense. While you may be meeting the letter of the law per Illinois Open Meetings Act by allowing emailed comments to be read at virtual board meetings, you should be doing more to facilitate real-time discussion with parents. I spoke to a representative from the Illinois IAG's office. He said that school boards should allow real-time exchanges if they want to maximize public input. Why haven't you done this? The next comment is from Bridget Wild. Dear 65 School Board, District Administration, District 65 teachers, fellow parents, and virtual attendees of the meeting tonight. I am reaching out as a pediatrician in Evanston, an ally working to be anti-racist, and a District 65 parent. My voice is solitary in this letter, but I am not alone in my perspective, and I am coming from a place of grave concern for every child in our district. First, I want to say that while emotions run deep and understandably varied surrounding the decision about whether or not it is safe to return to learning in classrooms together, I hold the basic assumption of every administrator, board member, and teacher that we share the same end desires. We want equitable and excellent learning outcomes for every child in this district, and we want that to occur in a safe environment for every team member involved in that experience. At the time of this writing, I am painfully aware that we are amid a surge of COVID cases and increased healthcare utilization. I have also lost a vulnerable close family member to this pandemic and seen the impacts of infection on families. Still, I worry that the lasting impact of our own trauma as adults from the stark and necessary shutdowns at the beginning of this pandemic have left us unable to move forward, hear the amassing data that school is safe, and find ways to help our children thrive. I know you appreciate as deeply and perhaps even more intimately the invaluable roles of schools play beyond simply teaching math and reading. Schools are an indispensable piece of the heart and soul of our children's life experience. I have experienced the very best efforts of teachers to meet every student's needs through exclusive remote learning. I received the phone notifications of seesaw comments added to submitted work all hours of the evenings and weekends of tireless and dedicated educators, and I am beyond grateful. Still, I have experienced the most engaged students struggle emotionally and academically, and I have spent more hours soothing tears of frustration over formatting an assignment than actually answering my child's questions about the content. Our children need to be in school at school. National and international data consistently shows that in-person elementary and middle school does not increase spread of COVID in the community. Editorial after editorial and academic paper after academic paper is highlighting the growing pediatric mental health emergency and widening educational outcome disparities for Black and Brown students. Furthermore, when someone tests positive who has been at an in-person school, there has not been spread of additional cases within the school so long as masks are worn. Children can and do wear masks. A large group of local pediatric providers are coming together with objective data to show Evanston is not exempt from this experience. There is a steep rise in severe mental health crisis among children. Families are withdrawing their kindergartners completely. Some parents spend all day trying to encourage their child to just log on to the iPad, something I never thought I'd say as a parent of 3 who have at times an unhealthy love affair with screens. Developmentally, their relationship to learning is being irreversibly damaged. In the coming weeks, this surge will abate, and we will hold our breaths waiting to hear whether an in-person schooling will occur this school year. Before those announcements, I wonder if the district would be amenable to publishing the list of members on the medical advisory team providing public health guidance and interpretation of the guidelines cited on our district site. A number of us have met with our respective school principals and were reminded that not everyone is as aware of the expected course of this pandemic. While we are on the precipice of having a publicly available vaccine, this vaccine is not approved for children and will still take years for COVID-19 to run out of wide circulation. Universal immunization cannot and should not be a requirement for D65 return to the classroom. Additionally, masks will very likely need to be a part of daily reality for the next 1 to 2 years, and they work. In the rare instance when someone does contract COVID while masked, there is even protective data to show the illness severity is less due to the lower inoculation load. Finally, please know that there are experts in our own community ready, willing, and eager to assist. Sincerely, the moral burden of this decision is heavy, and we are here to help navigate all of the barriers. We know our buildings are not perfect. We know our teacher and student body is diverse in age and health. We agree that all paths forward must value the health and safety of every individual. We believe this can and should include in-person options, and we believe the effort is worth it. Every child, every day, whatever it takes. Thank you for this opportunity to be heard and for your leadership in this unprecedented time of competing challenges. Bridget Wild, MD, Pediatric Hospitalist, mother of 3. And our last comment is from Deepa Nair. She says, "Dear D65 Board, Administration, teachers, parents, and fellow concerned residents, I am writing this letter as a concerned parent of an elementary school-age child in our district, and as a pediatrician who works in the pediatric emergency department, caring for the many children throughout the Chicagoland area who have been presenting with their physical illnesses and injuries, but also at alarming rates, but also at alarming rates for mental health crisis. I am speaking from the perspective of a physician who has spent many hours over the past 9 months caring for families and children who have had COVID-19, are concerned about COVID-19, or have come seeking psychiatric care for their children who are struggling in isolation and with virtual school throughout this ongoing pandemic. Among the factors that need to be weighed, I believe that the impact on the mental health of our children has not been given fair consideration. We are seeing a greater than 70% increase in visits for mental health crisis at our institution. And I can tell you from personal experience on the front lines, the most common thread amongst these kids has been stress, depression, and anxiety, exacerbated by social isolation. School is more than a place our children receive an education. As parents and educators, we all know the importance of socialization with their peers for all ages of children. As physicians, we see the effects of social isolation that seems to impact those who have been historically marginalized even more so. as many of their parents struggle to work while having their children navigate virtual schooling independently. I understand the many varying concerns and opinions regarding the decision on reopening schools, but I implore you to base the decision on scientific data. There have been multiple published studies showing that in-person school attendance has not caused spikes in case counts and that school-based transmission is exceedingly unlikely. Anecdotally, I will tell you that all of the pediatric patients I have tested for COVID-19, the transmission has come from parents or social gatherings where the attendees are not masked. Of all the patients I have tested who are lucky enough to be in person at school, I have not tested any patients who have become infected from a COVID-19 positive student peer in class. We know that masking is highly effective at reducing transmission rates. I know that we all have a common goal for equity and quality education for all children. However, as I look at other districts, I realize that our children are already disadvantaged as compared to some of these peer groups that have returned to school in person. I fear that our district will face even bigger challenges in the upcoming year if we do not work together to find a safe path to return to in-person learning, as those families with the means to seek private education with in-person schooling may leave. With our current surge in COVID-19 cases locally, this may seem like a difficult time to consider our path to return to school, but we know that this surge will abate and we need to start paving the way to offer our kids the in-person educational experience that they need and deserve. I am thankful for the extraordinary efforts put forth by our teachers to provide our children their education through remote learning thus far this year. I am so grateful for the kindness, care, creativity, and patience of our teachers as we have navigated these new frontiers of remote learning together. At the same time, I can't help but think about all the missed opportunities for education as we struggle through technology issues and challenges in keeping children engaged with online virtual learning for 6+ hours a day. To date, it has been unclear who within District 65 has been helping formulate the guidelines for return to school. I would like to propose that our district take advantage of the many experts in the medical field that live in Evanston, have children within District 65, and who are eager to assist. Thank you, Deepa Nair, MD, pediatrician, mother of a second grader. And that concludes the public comments for tonight.
Thank you, Adela. Biz, you have the next motion.
Yep. I move that the Board of Education accept the recommendations outlined in the attached group motion and approve the personnel appointments, leaves, and separations, November 2020 Board of Education meeting minutes, destruction and release of November 2018 closed session meeting minutes and recordings, October 2020 list bills and budget amendment, and the September 2020 treasurer's report.
Second.
Kim?
Yes.
Hernandez?
Yes.
Lindsay Ryan?
Yes.
Mendoza?
Yes.
Cartha?
Yes.
Hilpern?
Yes.
Tanya Vudi?
Yes.
Great. Motion passes 7-0.
Rebecca?
I move that the Board of Education approve the 3-year bid for elevator maintenance to professional elevator service.
Second.
Kim?
Yes.
Hernandez?
Yes.
Lindsay Ryan?
Yes.
Mendoza?
Yes.
Cartha?
Yes.
Hilpern?
Yes.
Tanya Vudi?
Yes.
Motion passes 7-0.
I move that the Board of Education approve all resolutions and certifications pertaining to the 2020 tax levy.
Second.
Kim?
Yes.
Yes.
Hernandez,
Yes.
Lindsay Ryan,
Yes.
Mendoza,
Yes.
Cartha,
Yes.
Halpern,
Yes.
Tanya Vudi.
Yes.
Motion passes 7-0.
And Joey, you have the next.
I move that the Board of Education adopt the recommended fiscal year 22 budget calendar.
Second.
Kim,
Yes.
Hernandez,
Yes.
Lindsay Ryan,
Yes.
Mendoza,
Yes.
Cartha,
Yes.
Halpern,
Yes.
Tanya Vudi.
Yes.
Okay, motion passes 7-0.
I move that the Board of Education approve the fiscal year 20 financial audit for District 65 and Park School as presented.
Second.
And do we need to pause for?
Yeah, if you don't mind, please. I would like to introduce the audit firm that performed the financial audit for the 2020 fiscal year. The audit is required by law to be performed at the end of every fiscal year. So the 2020 audit was performed by the audit firm of Baker Tilly. We have one of the partners at Baker Tilly here tonight who will be doing a presentation of the audit finding. His name is Nick Cavallari. Nick, take it away, please.
Okay, thank you for having me here this evening. It's nice to meet everyone. I put together a brief presentation that I intend to go over, but if there's questions along the way, just, please, by all means, just interrupt me and I can stop it and take them at the time. So I'm going to try to share my screen here. Share screen, screen 2, share. Can everybody see my PowerPoint presentation off to the? Okay, perfect.
Yes.
All right. Okay, so I'm going to briefly go through the audit results. So we completed our audit and rendered all of our reports on the district's financial statements, and they were dated November 23rd of 2020. The scope of our audit is fairly sizable. We render assurances on the district's annual financial statements. There is an annual financial report that the Illinois State Board of Education requires be audited. The district is required to have a single audit, and part of that is a document called the Schedule of Expenditures of Federal Awards that's required to be audited. There is an agency in the state of Illinois that's been around for a few years now. It's called the Grant Accountability and Transparency Unit. They have a document called a Consolidated Year-End Financial Report that they require the external auditor to provide assurances over. And then we also conducted a single audit of the district's major federal programs in accordance with the uniform guidance, which is commonly referred to as a single audit. It's a federal compliance audit. We do that for the district if you expend over $750,000 of federal awards. We also are required to render a report on internal control over financial reporting, which is something that you have to do when you conduct an audit in accordance with governmental auditing standards. So there's been several documents that we issue. I understand that they've been provided to the board. I pulled some screenshots out of some of those documents for purposes of the presentation. But one of the things that we always like to go over is, ultimately management has responsibility over the fair presentation of the financial statements, establishing effective internal control over financial reporting, compliance with laws, contracts, and grants. Because you're using federal dollars in your district, you have compliance requirements as to the use of those dollars. And then at the end of the audit, there's a document called the Management Representation Letter, which is a series of assertions that management makes to the external auditor regarding the financial statements and the use of federal award dollars. Our responsibility is to render opinions on the financial statements to test for compliance, and then also if we identify any risks in internal control over financial reporting, to report those back to management and to the governing body. when we're performing a financial statement audit, there are certain things that auditing standards require the external auditor to get some serious comfort over. I guess perform some very specific procedures over to make sure that the audit addresses these risks. These risks aren't unique to your district. These are risks that are evident in every financial statement audit. So I don't want the board to think that we've called these significant risk areas due to your internal control structure at the district. These are just inherent in a set of audited financial statements. Those two risk areas are management override of controls and improper revenue recognition due to fraud. So what we do is we incorporate appropriate audit procedures to make sure that we've appropriately addressed these risks. And then at the end of the audit, we conclude back to the governing body and the management. We believe that our procedures were sufficient to address these particular risks in the audit itself. There are other key areas of emphasis that we do, gain a better understanding of controls and walkthroughs and perform a series of audit procedures around, and that's, cash and investments, payroll cycle, capital assets in the financial statements, revenues, some of the disclosures in the financial statements. So these are some of the areas that we focus on. We just want to bring those to the governing body's attention that, those are things that we look at during the audit. What's important to understand is that in a set of financial statements, there are situations where estimates are used. They're just necessary because the information isn't necessarily available. Some of the estimates that are used in your financial statements more relate to disclosures. The district has pension disclosures and other post-employment benefit disclosures in the financial statements. The depreciation expense on capital assets is an estimate based on useful lives of the asset and historical values. One of the estimates that is a little bit new to the district's financial statements on this particular year that we audited is this concept of a state on behalf payment. In Illinois, throughout the entire state of Illinois, every school district has a on behalf situation in place. And what that basically means is the state of Illinois is making contributions to the teacher's retirement system and the teacher's health insurance system on the district's behalf, because the district has the employees, the teachers, the certified personnel that are working at the district, but the state of Illinois is making contributions to the pension system for those employees. And I'll get a little bit into how those are shown in your financial statements this year. So the results of our fiscal year 2020 audit, we were able to render what they call an unmodified audit opinion, or commonly referred to as a clean audit opinion, on the annual financial statements. We were also able to render an unmodified audit opinion on the Illinois State Board of Education annual financial report, the schedule of expenditures of federal awards, and the consolidated year-end financial report. So that's what you want to hear when the external auditor comes to talk about the type of assurance that they were able to render on your financial statements. This is the highest level assurance that you can receive. So whenever I come to talk with a governing body and about the financial statements, there's a lot of different schedules that are included in there, but I like to focus on this particular schedule in the financial statements. It's called the Statement of Revenues, Expenditures, and Changes in Fund Balances. What this basically does is it shows your funds as columns. You'll have the revenues at the top, you have the expenditures in the middle, and then there's this category down here at the bottom called Other Financing Sources and Uses. This category is commonly used to account for transfers between funds and to account for financing transactions. When you look at this particular document, I like to think of this left side. This is actually a page break. If you had the book in front of you, you'd see it. The left side is really your operations. Your general fund for financial reporting purposes includes your ed fund, your working cash fund, and your tort fund. Those funds all have to be consolidated together into the general fund for presentation purposes. We've presented the operations and maintenance fund, the transportation fund, the IMRF funds to major, so that when you look at the basic financial statements, you can see the activity of those funds very clearly. And what you can see is that these operational funds, did not have deficit spending or significant, issues with the financial results. Ultimately, some of these these surpluses of revenues over expenditures were actually used to be transferred to other funds to fund capital projects work. So there was a transfer out of, I believe it was the ed fund to the O&M fund, and then subsequently to the capital projects fund during the year. But, ultimately, when I look at the district's financial position, are there anything there that's concerning, going concern matters? Nothing of that matter came to my attention. So one of the things I want to just point out very quickly to the board, when you look at this document, you see the general fund and you say state aid, $45.4 million. We don't receive $45.4 million from the state of Illinois for our operations. If you look here at the expenditure category, this line right here, state retirement contributions. This is that on behalf payment that I spoke of just a little bit ago. What ends up happening is the state of Illinois is making contributions to the teacher's retirement system and the teacher's health insurance system. We have to estimate how much those contributions are based on the information that's available. Those estimates for fiscal year 20 was that the state of Illinois contributed on your behalf to those two systems approximately $33 million. So there's an expenditure that gets recorded on the financial statements, but then also there is a revenue. This transaction is basically a paper accounting entry. It has no impact on your ending fund balances or your operational results. It's required, though, to be reported in the financial statements. This is a slide that I put together. It's my understanding that the district is commonly looking at the operational results of the operating funds. So what I did was I added together the general fund, which includes your ed, tort, and working cash, your transportation, and your IMRF funds. These are commonly referred to at the district as the operating funds. And then I showed the budget for the revenues, the expenditures, and then what you anticipated your revenues compared to your expenditures to be at the time you adopted the budget. And then these are your actual results. So what you can see is that the district runs a very, very tight budget to actual result. I mean, these differences are just very small, given the size of the magnitude of your budget. So you anticipated having revenues in excess of expenditures of about 5.5 million, and they came in at about 6.1. And for the most part, that was within the expenditure area, just due to the closures of the schools and things of that nature. This is a commonly referenced analysis. Every school district in the state of Illinois has a financial profile score that the State Board of Ed uses to assess, each district's financial well-being, and it's commonly has, a few different categories: fund balance to revenue ratio, expenditure to revenue ratio, how much cash you have on hand, if you access any short-term borrowing during the year, and then a ratio of your long-term debt outstanding compared to your EAB. And either the highest score you can receive is a 4, your district received a 3.8, or the formula kicks out this recognition score, which is the highest score that you can receive on your financial profile score. One of the things I like to always point out when I come to talk about the financial results is if there's something that sticks out to me regarding, good stewardship of the board and management to, identify and access opportunities to save money. And ultimately, during the year when we were auditing, we identified that the district completed a bond refunding transaction. And as a result of that transaction, the district was able to reduce its total debt service payments over the next 11 years by approximately $1.9 million. And then there's also this economic gain or loss calculation that tends to discount that back. And that still showed an economic gain of approximately $1.7 million. This is a disclosure that's in your financial statements, but this is just something that I wanted to bring to the board's attention as well. So as part of the audit, we're required to assess your single audit needs. And one of the things that we have to do is look at programs that have been audited as major programs in the prior 2 years, and then make sure that we select certain major programs for testing based on a risk assessment, and we have to get at least 40% coverage of your total federal awards that were expended during the year. So for this particular fiscal year audit, we audited 2 major programs: the district's special education cluster, also known as the IDEA program, and then the Head Start cluster. And what we were able to render from an assurance standpoint is that we provided an unmodified audit opinion on compliance. That means that we did not have any issues with your compliance with the compliance requirements that the federal government asks us to test. And at the same time, they ask us to test internal controls over the use of those funds in accordance with the compliance requirements that you have to in place for the use of those awards. So on both fronts, on the compliance standpoint and on the internal control standpoint, we did not identify any issues. So a clean audit opinion on the use of federal dollars. One of the things that we're also required to do as part of performing a financial statement audit is gain an understanding of the internal controls that are in place over the preparation of the financial statements. So earlier during the presentation, I talked about some of the risk areas that we look at, management override or revenue recognition, but then there's also the other areas of financial disclosures, payroll, a lot of different inputs that go into the financial statements. So we walk through controls, we conduct our audit, and really for the most part, we're doing this so that we can plan and tailor our audit approach to make sure that when we render an audit opinion, we've done the appropriate audit procedures to see if there's any material errors in the financial statements. We're not actually providing any assurances over the effectiveness of your internal controls. We actually disclaim an opinion. We say we're not providing assurances on your effectiveness of your internal controls. However, if certain matters come to our attention during the course of our audit, we're required to communicate those to the governing body and to management. So there's this definition of an internal control deficiency, and it's essentially saying that if the design or operation of a control does not allow management or employees the normal course of their duties to prevent, detect, and correct misstatements on a timely basis. And that's just the general terminology for a control deficiency. And then you have different tiers of control deficiencies out there. There's a significant deficiency, and then there's a material weakness. The significant deficiency is essentially, this particular matter isn't going to prevent a material error from being detected. However, it's important enough that we communicate it to governing body and to management. And then the material weakness definition is essentially, this could have a material error in the financial statements that may go undetected. So during the course of our audit, we identified one material weakness this year. So when we were performing our audit, one of the things that we identified was that there were some bond payments, principal and interest payments that were scheduled to be paid. They were lawful payments. They were actually made by the district. However, they weren't recorded in the financial statements. And we did all of our testing procedures, and we ultimately, talked these things through with management, and ultimately they were corrected, reported in the financial statements. Everything's good in the financial statements as is right now regarding those payments, but they weren't detected during the normal course of operations. So we reported this as a material weakness over this particular area. And we've worked with management on this. They've written a well-written response, regarding their internal control structure and some of the challenges with the accounting software that kind of created this problem. And this is just something that we have to report to the governing body. One of the other things we're required to report back to the governing body is if we identify any non-compliance issues with laws or regulations. And I'm pleased to let the board know that we did not identify any such matters during the course of our audit. Difficulties encountered in performing the audit or disagreements with management. These are required communications under auditing standards. The audit was a challenge this year for many reasons relating to COVID, and just we conducted the entire audit remotely, and that's had stressors on everybody in the business office, even at the school level. So those were some of the things that took us a little bit longer to work through the audit this year. We did not have any disagreements with management regarding the application of accounting principles or policies or amounts recorded in the financial statements. One of the things I just want to leave behind with the board is that there's an upcoming accounting standard that will be effective for your fiscal year 21 financial statements, and it relates to how your student activity funds are reported in your financial statements. Under current auditing standards, your student activities are reported in what they call a fiduciary fund. It's a separate schedule in your financial statements. Starting in fiscal year 21, your student activity fund activity and ending balances will be required to be consolidated and recorded within your educational fund. And the state board is working on correcting the Illinois State Board of Ed AFR They've already made changes to the state budget document for this new change. So when you look at the financial statements next year, you will see, you know, the collective revenues, the collective expenditures of those club accounts and ending fund balances. And that concludes my presentation. I would welcome any questions that the board may have at this time.
Thanks, Nick.
Thank you. So it seems to me that bond payments would be a pretty significant payment to be made. How can a bond payment get lost?
Actually, if I can address that, the bond payment was made on time, but the issue was that this year was an unusual year with COVID-19, with us folks having to leave the office early. So ordinarily, before the audit, what we'll do, we'll tidy up the year before the auditors come to make sure everything is tied up. We didn't have the opportunity to do that this year because our folks left the building in March. So we were working to try to keep up with everything. So the bond payment was made, it just wasn't posted when it should have been. That's what that was.
Combination of human error, software error,
yeah.
COVID, which only exacerbated the issue. And since then, we put in place additional process that will ensure that this will not happen again. And if I could just address our internal controls, we put additional internal controls in the district about 15 years ago, which means that our employees in the business office performing accounting functions, they only have access to their own functions. They are prevented to accessing separate functions. So we feel good about internal controls, but unfortunately, in this case, this was missed, and again, it was exacerbated by Alio. And as you know, we are replacing our software because our software, only created issues this year. It did not help us detect our problems, but compounded issues. So we working extra hard. We're working with Nick's firm to put in place additional procedures to make sure that that does not happen again. But the payment was made, which was the most important thing.
Thank you.
I have a couple questions. So Nick, you said that we earned a rating of 3.8 out of a possible rating of 4 for financial standing. Is it fair to say that that is a kind of a false positive because of the referendum dollars, that our actual fiscal health position looks better under the eyes of this audit than it actually is?
Well, I think what it does is it measures your current status, and there's not an ability to show without the referendum or with the referendum. It's just, here's your balances, and it's a series of ratios that they look at. How much revenue you have compared to your expenditures, what your fund balance ratios are. Those are, to segregate those between non-referendum, I mean, you probably wouldn't have that situation. I don't know what the value of your referendum is. I wasn't around when it passed to kind of break that, through or into pieces, but it's a result of,
Sure.
the financial position that you have. Without that, you would not have this result. I would imagine you'd have less revenues, less fund balances. So I would think it would be a fair statement without doing any additional analysis that you may not have received the same score had that not been passed.
Thank you. Yeah, I think that's the point that I wanted to make through the question, was just making sure that a good, healthy rating was kind of expected when the referendum was passed, because it put the district in a false positive position to look like it had more money in the reserves than it actually has, and that those reserves, as committed by this board to the community, are being used to maintain the services and the staffing and the services to kids that we committed to to buy us time to solve the fiscal problems that it actually faces. And those conversations seem to be happening in parallel right now. We appreciate the good rating. We accept the good rating, and harder conversations are a different meeting this week. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, Nick.
Okay, thank you very much, everyone.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Can I read the motion again? I jumped the gun.
You don't have to. We can just do the roll call.
So Kim,
Yes.
Hernandez,
Yes.
Lindsay Ryan,
Yes.
Mendoza,
Yes.
Cartha,
Yes.
Halpern,
Yes.
Tanya Vudi.
Yes.
Great. Motion passes 7-0.
Okay, I'll go with the next motion. So I move that the Board of Education approve the resolution authorizing the filing of the lawsuit against Jewel along with the attorney fee agreement with France Law Group. I don't know if we want to pause here for a bit, and Raphael, if you could explain to the community about what the lawsuit entails.
Yeah, what the lawsuit entails is that we all know over the years the electric cigarette makers, they've been selling cigarette, and just like the old-fashioned cigarettes, before stringent rules were put in place, they targeted younger children. And what we're finding out is over the years, we have more of our middle schoolers who have been using e-cigarettes. So what this lawsuit is, it's an opportunity to hold those companies accountable. And the leading manufacturer of those e-cigarettes is Juul's. So it's an opportunity to hold the companies accountable and also to take into account the additional supports that will be required by social workers and some of our clinicians to make sure that we wean our kids off of smoking e-cigarettes. So that's what this is. So it's a class action suit that the district is joining to really punish and hold it accountable, Juul. And the only way that we know to do that is to financially go after them. That's what this is. And if we're successful, then whatever the settlement amount is, the district will receive some of that and we'll use it, hopefully, to strengthen our social services that we provide to our middle school students.
Thank you for that, Raphael. And I'm just going to share real quick this anecdote from my own life. When I was in high school back in the 80s, we used to have open lunch in Chicago. The high school that I went to was Lakeview. And during lunchtime, they had what's called cigarette girls. So they would go out during lunchtime when we were outside, and they would sell us Newport cigarettes and menthol cigarettes. They would give us free packets, just to show you how some companies and corporations were trying to target young people, and particularly young people of color. So again, I have had a lot of friends. I had picked up smoking when I was a kid, but I gave it up because it didn't work out. I mean, it was good, and I was getting asthma. So at any rate, again, I think that for me, this is a personal piece. We really do need to make corporations and companies accountable that are targeting children and again, giving us poisons that again just are not good for our children's health. So I would like a second for this particular motion.
And I also just want to clarify too, that because we are joining a class action, there's not a monetary cost up front to the district. For joining it, there's going to be some staff time that maybe needs to provide information, but just want to clarify that.
That's correct. Whatever legal fees that accrues is going to be paid from the settlement that the courts will allocate for the litigation. Thank you.
Second, and go ahead with the roll call.
Kim,
Yes.
Hernandez,
Yes.
Lindsay Ryan,
Yes.
Mendoza,
Yes.
Cartha,
Yes.
Halpern,
Yes.
Tanya Vudi.
Yes.
Great. Motion passes 7-0.
And with that, with no further business to come before the board, this meeting adjourns at 8:07 p.m. Thank you all.